Well, I just woke my sweetie pie up because he had the alarm on, and if it went off, he didn't get up. And once a week, he meets with, oh, do I need my sunglasses? I probably do, but I'm not going to go back because he'll start talking to me. Oh, dear. Anyway, he goes to a men's Bible study and prayer, praying for our nation, and it's a beautiful thing to see men from all walks of life gathering together in unity, something we're lacking today. You say, well, they're all a bunch of Christian guys. Don't be naive. Here I am saying, don't be naive again. Because I've talked to these guys. I might go up there before it shuts down because they go to the cafe coffee shop. And I visit with some of the men. I love it. I just love men. I enjoy their company. I always have. I've worked with a lot of men in my life in the music business. Worked with a lot of guys. They were all sweet people. They were protective and good to me, and I probably didn't get in pickles while I was playing professionally on the road because I had good guys around me. And I'm thankful for that. And I had a boyfriend. He was protective too. So what I wanted to say just in regard to my husband is that I've met men in this group he prays with, and they come from all kinds of backgrounds, like probably many of you. Some of them weren't raised Christian, some were raised atheist. They didn't believe, agnostic. They were told as kids, you can believe whatever you want. Or they got raised Hindu, Buddhist. A lot of them have what I would call mainline denomination backgrounds. All these divisions in the Christian church. They were Catholic, Protestant, Evangelical, Baptist, Lutheran, Episcopalian. You know, a lot of them are still in those denominations. But here these men get together and they're studying God's Word, the Bible. We call it the Bible. I like God's Word because it says, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us. Some of you might go, this says 9/11 part 2. Yeah. I'm going to continue from the one that was started early this morning. This podcast is going to be addressing 9/11, which tomorrow is a celebration. Today's the 10th of September 2024. On the last podcast, I was doing a review of 3 major events historically in this so-called free nation of ours, the United States of America. To the republic for which it stands, one nation under God. Which God? There are a lot of gods. Indivisible, with liberty, real freedom. I don't like to use the word democracy. And there's a reason. I touched on it in the last one. Because having a king doesn't work, and having a fake democracy doesn't work. What's a fake democracy? Well, when I address how we vote and how we have an electoral college in this country, it'll be clear. But right now I'm going to talk about those events as I brought them up on the last podcast. How I believe from my research that Abraham Lincoln was taken out for a reason. Boy, I look really sleepy without any makeup today. Oh well. In the raw, as often I am. Till I get in the car and I've put on my lipstick. People came over to this country, as I shared previously, with different intentions. But there were many who were fleeing a totalitarian regime of sorts. And as I said on the last one, you have a caste system in India, but if you went to Britain, you had these families that developed from the time of Rome in what we called Europe, and eventually these families developed countries, France, England, Germany, Norway, Sweden, Portugal, Spain, Scotland. And what you have there is families that ruled with their big castles and their own caste system. Indentured servants. They weren't the same as the slaves in the United States, but there was a system of the rich and the poor. Those who held the purse strings and the money, and those that had very little. French Revolution occurred because of what was going on in that country. So they fled Europe, went across what I call the Atlantic Pond, and they came to this country. And there were other forces coming besides those people that wanted freedom and liberty and justice for all. There were forces that were still a part of the European money people, banker gangsters that we still see today, secret societies. And so when we fast forward from the murder, the takeout of Abraham Lincoln after the Civil War, we fast forward and a lot of activity in between there. The development of Europe gaining control over our banking system. I'll just say the one name, Rothschild. I talked about Khazars, you can look them up, and those families that took on a culture and a religion that was not rooted in bloodline, but they have become their own bloodlines. They have a lot of power and control over banking and money globally. So they were able to take control, even though during the American Revolution of the early 1800s, they couldn't. So they knew they had to destroy from within. They had to do it from within, without a shot. And they have been very successful. And for those of you that don't know that the divide, conquer, and destabilization going on in our nation by pitting Democrat against Republican, left against right, believer against non-believer, you can come up with so many cultural divisions, age divisions, young and old. They have to destabilize from within to be able to take over. And they've been working it, and they did a big one when they took out Lincoln and came in with the Federal Reserve in the early 1900s with Woodrow Wilson, their patsy. A patsy that they were able to now do what Rome had done throughout Europe, taxation. Even though the Boston Tea Party in the U.S. had men shouting, "No taxation without representation." Oh, why are they doing the last piece, taking your land? How is a man free when he owns his own land? Oh my goodness, my mind is just wanting to teach so many things. What happens when a man owns his property, but he can be kicked out of his home as an elder because he's got to pay what used to be even more than a mortgage to live in his own home to the government? We're right back in Europe with the king. Give me your money. And we can leave Britain and go right back to Rome at the time of Jesus Christ. That's why the Romans had control over the Jews too, back in the day. So, we have Bobby Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, our president, with his brother, Martin Luther King Jr. I was in middle school and they took them all out. Boom, boom, boom. Assassinated them. And it was only months prior to that John F. Kennedy was discussing the secret societies of Masonry and all those white-robed with their pointy little white hats looked like the Crusades. And why? Because I'm sorry to say, my dear Catholic friends, there's more to this than you know. Those who own the information, they know the secrets. Those who get the booty, and I can assure you, they came back with a lot of gold and silver and gems. Yes, the Crusades were involved in other pieces. It's not that simple. But you can go look at the banking system in the Crusades in Europe and the Khazars and Rome. If you love history, and you can learn a lot about global control and manipulation of men, of mankind. We have a Democrat here. It says Harris Walls. And you know what? It's okay. People are complaining on our neighborhood groups. There's their sign. We don't want these signs up. Hey, lighten up. I might disagree with this neighbor as we are having a presidential race. I may disagree. That's okay. Will I hang out with them all the time? Who knows? I've got a few friends that I grew up with. We are not in political agreement. I wish we were. I still love them. Some of you know who you are. You might watch this. I love you dearly. And then we have those people who they're so bitter, full of hate. And all they talk about is love, is love, is love. But they're so full of hate and bitterness. Get to the bottom of it, why you are. Stop causing heartache and sorrow for people. You know, we're supposed to love one another, but we're supposed to hate evil. A lot of people never get that right. Okay, so I fast forwarded from Abe Lincoln to these orchestrated murders. Not one-man shooters, by the way. Don't believe it. So, we leave the 1960s and we hit 9/11. Oh my goodness, look at that. I don't know if you can see the mountains, but they are pretty this morning. All right, let's take a peek up here. There they are. Can't see them really clearly on here, And sadly, we've got all that techie stuff in the way and the electronics. But I get up and I go over to the desert and I walk around the bottom of these mountains and they're beautiful. Okay, gonna get back with me, my Sleepy Hollow look. So, 9/11. Tomorrow, because this is the day before, it's September 10th, we are going to have a remembrance. We lost many lives that day where we were attacked on our own soil. Ah, that's lovely too. And when we were attacked on our own soil, I believe the attack was no different than Abraham Lincoln's death, the Rothschilds and other forces from Europe that came in and took over our banking system from within, started the Federal Reserve. In the 19-teens, they were bringing it into existence. And then we had 2 wars sandwiched, followed by other wars. War that my husband was a part of. There was the Korean when I was little, and then the Vietnam. Communist Korea. Communism. That's what is really going on when they talk democracy today. It's communism. Oh, they throw out the isms of Marxism, fascism, totalitarianism. Do we really have freedom right now? Well, I can do this podcast, and I get concerned about whether I give a little history, allegedly this and that, regarding the things I'm talking about, but I don't know how long these can be put up because I've already dealt with just putting something simple up, some medical stuff that was going on in 2020 when they locked down, and 2 times. And I wasn't even doing podcasts. I just put up some posts. First from a nurse. There was a name for the physicians in 2020 that were doing research. They wanted to do autopsies on bodies. Of course, now if you go online and you go under embalmers and put in all the information having to do with that lockdown time of 2020, see, I don't want to trigger some weird thing because I'm not living in a time anymore when there's freedom, because they censor. Anyway, you'll find a lot about the, some of these clots are over 1 foot long that they find inside of people's veins and arterioles, and they can't put the embalming fluid into the bodies. There's a lot of info right now. I don't know how long they're going to let this information be up, but we shall see, and you'll learn a lot about the embalmers and the clots. A lot of people dying from clots. Oh, good morning. Look at that beauty. Oh, aren't you a beauty? Yes. Hey, have a super day. It's nice to be in a nice neighborhood. I mentioned that there's some grumpy neighbors around. Look at this cool looking house. I think I was looking up at the mountains. There's the mountains again. So this house is so cool looking. The landscaping is beautiful, and I mentioned earlier that I had wanted to be an architect, but I couldn't afford the art supplies because I didn't have any support or anybody to help me. I just barely survived working 2-3 jobs in college. Being the eldest of 10 and one parent surviving. Good morning. Okay. So many sweet people out here. Even though I've got those grumpy ones that haven't been nice, I know that they tend to lean to one side of thinking. And I just keep trying to be nice to them back, grumpy as they are. We have a choice. Bitter or better? I used to hear that years ago. You're going to be bitter or better? So, 9/11 occurs. And in all of these cases, I'm convinced now that they're all part of the same stream that goes back to Europe of evil for global domination. They're orchestrated. They're not one-man shooters. Most of the time. Maybe occasionally, but most of the time. Good morning. Beautiful and cool today.
Cool, finally cool.
I love it, love it. It's good to be nice. It's good to be happy. It's good to look for the best in everything. But it's not good to be naive or foolish or gullible. I brought that up in the first part of this. Don't be gullible. Above all, guard your heart. Right in there. Such are the things of God inside of you. And they won't be in this old mortal coil forever, because this old mortal coil that I'm dragging up to walk with me every day, it's temporal. When 9/11 occurred, and I happened to be walking into a Starbucks, that's where I was the day that the first tower had been hit by the plane. A woman ran in. I was in a wealthy neighborhood, getting ready to go to a massage that morning before work. I'd signed up really early at a salon. And as I was seated quietly with my paperwork for teaching, and I had my Bible notes out, this gal comes running in, 3-piece suit, tall, stately looking, and screaming, "We've been attacked." Turn on the TV. Of course, Starbucks had on some lighthearted silliness or a game or something up. And they turned and we're all watching. And what happens? Everyone's aghast. The tower that had not gone down, the second tower, got hit by another plane. Okay. After that, a building didn't get hit by a plane, it went down. Building 7. And I went, what's going on here? I went next door. Of course, everyone in the salon was all up in arms about it, and everybody all over the world. I went and I put flowers in front of the mosque with other friends from church. We love all of you. We know that you didn't do it. These were the men that were in the planes. They're responsible, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Fast forward within a year, I'd had a lot of misgivings. And I had started researching a few years before as my kids got into college and I had time on my hands on the weekends. I was newly married with a brainiac like the guy I'm with. And we began to really question the narratives they were giving us. Just like I'd done a lot of deep dives on the Kennedy assassinations and Dr. King, and a little bit on Abraham Lincoln, since I'd taught history. I said, something's rotten in Denmark, Dave. to my sweetie. Yeah, he's former Vietnam veteran. He was an officer, saw a lot behind the scenes. He would deliver and fly in information to DC in a little plane, because as I have a plane going over, probably a small plane like that. He even flew it sometimes, in spite of the fact that he never took any courses. The guy would give him the wheel, so to speak, tell him what to do as he went up the East Coast with secret papers at the time, because we didn't have technology in the 60s. They just have to get that info straight up to the Pentagon. His dad worked at the Pentagon. He was a Marine. All these guys fighting, many dying, for a country where behind the veil, I think there were a lot more good guys in the old days. Maybe not, but that's what I think. Today, the corruption is deep. But those same corrupt forces can go back to the garden. Powers of good and the powers of evil. So what was going on with that 9/11? Was the narrative they gave us just like the narrative with Kennedy, the truth or a lie? I began to believe that we'd been duped, tricked and conned. And I wrote a song when this fourth narrative hit, these 2020 lockdowns and all the rioting and the division and the injecting, and you have to have like almost like allegedly a Nazi card to even walk in and purchase something or go to a restaurant, at least on the coastal city I lived in, which is, by the way, why I'm not living there. Beautiful place, corrupt to the T. And I know about the corruption there. I know a lot. I don't know all of it. I know a lot. Part of it is to destroy our children. Mentally. Mind control. CIA, MK Ultra, mind control. I've had people say to me in some of the meetings we go to, I never heard of that. Well, did we teach it in history? No. And what is it when you can manipulate the masses? What's a quick way to get generations of kids? Control the education system. Start in college, in the universities, and work your way down to preschool, and then let the government be the nanny and own the kids and make the rules and give them these narratives about Abe Lincoln in history and the presidents that were assassinated, and President, his brother, and Dr. King. Feed them all a narrative. Folks, don't believe the narrative. Oh, but that's disinformation. That's just some crazy conspiratorial idea. You think? How long will we have books around? I've looked at things from Cambridge and Europe and studied some of the old texts that especially in the early 2000s, I could get them online. A lot of the stuff I looked at when I was deep diving after 9/11 has disappeared off the web. That's why our dictionaries have changed. Did you know our dictionaries are not the ones that I looked at as a kid when I went to the library and there was no technology? And I was looking through the Dewey Decimal System and digging in and getting old texts from history to look at. That's why there's book burning. That's why they take down statues, even the bad guys. Our history is important. The history of the South is important. The history of the Khazarian roots and Masonic roots and the KKK and what has happened with the left-leaning Democratic Party. And then we have a two-party system where the right side, what we call the right, and the Republican rhinos are bought and paid for, or blackmailed. Had a guy over the other day, he had worked in Intel during the time of Ollie North and drugs in South America, and Green Beret going around the world, and he's still dealing with the things that he looks back that went on because he was a good kid, like a lot of young men, like my husband, like his daddy in World War II. They went to fight for freedom, and then they started seeing mines, South America and Africa, mines and money, taking over land, drug running. Part of the plan. You have to destroy from within, drug up generations in school through indoctrination, and then drug them with drugs. You know, I still got to teach when they weren't drugging kids up, getting them used to taking pills, pharmaceuticals. Children were not labeled like they are today. Now, does that mean that there's anything wrong with seeing that a kid needs special attention if they're having learning disabilities, or a child is brilliant and needs to be challenged more? No, that's a good thing. That's okay. Take a look at this. I'm up by the mountain. Now, closer. I'm getting closer. In this little walk of mine. You know, the mountains completely circle. They go, oh, here comes the truck. I better get up on the sidewalk. If I go up to the mountain where one of the pools is that I swim at, I end up right below this batch of mountains. So here comes my biking friends. Good morning.
Good morning.
And there's a pool up there, and then I'm looking over to the west towards Los Angeles. We're not right next to Los Angeles, but there's mountains over there when you get up near the hill here, and you've got some height and can see more. And it goes all the way around. We're kind of in these foothills where the homes are.